you want to learn more about effective management, head over to mattsingers.com and sign up for my free management training.
Welcome to the Mad Singers Management Podcast from madsingers.com, where entrepreneurs and business managers learn and share. If you like the show, don't forget to leave a review.
Hello, and welcome back to the Mad Singers Management Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Patrice Bisiot. Welcome, Patrice.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. I'm super excited for our chat today. But just before we get too far into it, there's people around the world who don't yet know who you are. Let's enlighten them a little bit. So who are you, Patrice, and how have you ended up where you are right now?
All right. The question of the day. So 18 years old, that's where everything started. From Paris, I always knew from a little, being a little boy that I wanted to make a difference in this world, but I also wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to be my own entrepreneur, which I didn't know the word yet. I just knew I couldn't really have someone above me telling me what to do, but I wanted to conquer the world, and I wanted my name to be, out there in this world, becoming a household name. So dream came to 18 years old, managing 3 hair salons because hair became the craft of choice at the moment. And I already was really in that entrepreneurship journey. And 3 salons later, my boss was like, all right, you have achieved an incredible thing at 18. Here you are. And I'm like, this is only the beginning of my journey. My journey became 18 years old, moving to Miami. And a year later, opened my own business at 19 and some change. Now, that hair salon became very successful very quickly. But in that, again, I thought, but this is not really what I came here for. I came here to conquer Hollywood, the celebrities, the red carpet. That was really my inspiration. So from that, taking fashion into the next level of not just helping with the appearance, but starting understanding, I was putting my clients through a series of questions because it's like, are you promoting a premiere in a movie? Are you making an apology in the media? Maybe are you promoting the next best thing in your company in front of TV or whatever? So it became like, I need to know how to help them putting that together, because appearance is only the last part of the puzzle. We need to know all the pieces and all the signals you're sending out to knowing what are you doing. So throughout keynotes and helping coaching one-on-one my clients, it turned into from fashion to helping with self-development, leadership, communication, team building. And all those elements together made me now launch my second book. And that second book is really about branding. It's about building your brand, knowing how to do that. But how to do that, back again, 2009, as I'm building all that success, well, I ended up in my car, losing it all. My 4 businesses within 3 weeks went down to the ground. And my business partner, who stole from me, stole for the count. I owed a huge amount of money. My car becomes my new home. And now it's my time to reset the clock, to knowing, all right, I am such an entrepreneur. I always had it in my head and in my heart and in my DNA, but now it's time to prove it. And that's how I built back up from there, even bigger.
Perfect. That sounds like a very interesting story. Funny enough, I think most of us have had some ups and downs, particularly if you've been around for a while, right? But I think it's also one of those things that makes us a lot stronger. I think thriving when things are going well is easy enough, but it's really when you face difficulty that you build the most strength and the most durability, if you will. So, you mentioned self-development a good bit, and I think that's probably one of the most important pieces of really being a leader or being a manager or being, I mean, even when I say a leader, it doesn't even need to be within a business, but just in your community, for your family and so on, right? Like self-development is where it all starts. So what's kind of your take on self-development, and how do you go about doing it?
Yes. All right. So you see, as a little boy, although I had all those great inspirations, I was not only just shy, it was not even shy, it was beyond shy. And only beyond shy made me being bullied at school, pushed around. My father was not exactly an example of love either. So I was never anywhere where I belonged. It was always me and my own little world. That's why I was drowning myself into magazines and books and music, because that was my way to get away from the world, to know that apparently no one really was interested in me or whatever I had to say. So along the way, as I was building this thing to get out there, when the first time I actually got on the red carpet to do an interview with the media, and it was a national network, it was like, wow, how did I do that? Like suddenly it felt like so many, I traveled through a time warp and then I got into the future. And that really understanding that little by little by little, I had to put one piece at a time, taking each compliment that someone gave me instead of taking it along, as initially I used to take compliments such as they're laughing at me, they're making fun of me, to like, oh, okay, maybe they mean it. Maybe I am worth something. Maybe I actually bring something to the world. And that along the way became little by little, but really my breaking point of self-development was when I lost it all. Because for me, it was always important to look great. From the outside, I had to look larger than life. How many homes, how many cars, how many everything. And the definition of me was my bank account. And from that, instead of being obsessed with a kill, I became obsessed with how do I make me happy? How do I finally get to this place? I have nothing left. Not only that, I owe a lot of money to this, to this friend of mine that I borrowed, because at the time when I built this business, I borrowed a huge amount of money. And that got me to be my self-discovery, to knowing how that's how it works in order to build solidly your foundation. And if you're an entrepreneur, you have your business, like you said, leader could be leader in your family, in your, like you say again, in your community, your neighborhood. You don't have to have 1,000 employees to be that leader. We are the leader of our own lives alone. That is where it starts at home. And that to me was my breaking point to starting building things solidly, knowing that the value of me was based on me. And the more digital also I went, the more I had to learn that people criticizing you, the trolls that have nothing better to do than, putting horrible comments online, that's their journey, not mine. I used to take everything so personally until realizing that's their problem, not mine. And that's really how I did it within 20 years.
You learn to develop a thicker skin, I would say.
Yes, but also more importantly, knowing that if the outcome was not what I wanted, instead of calling it failure and beat myself over the head for it, I actually removed that word. I just became in peace with it. I aligned with the fact that, okay, I did this, and that, thinking the result was going to equal this. It didn't. All right, so how do I go about it to do it differently to get to my result? And the less I beat myself up, the more I got involved with the process. Yeah, my skin became thicker, but not just thicker. It became more in harmony with me, and it became more aligned with, like, saying that, again, if somebody comes at me with something, that's really because something is going on in their lives. Because on me, I did all the parts. I checked everything. I did everything, as what my heart told me. Then I'm good.
Yeah, and I think that's very key as well, right? I think a lot of the time, not just when you're dealing with people, but in general, people think differently, people behave differently. And in the end of the day, if you develop yourself, if you build your own confidence, you put yourself in a place where, you believe in your own steps, you believe in your own process. And as long as you do that, feedback is great. Getting ideas from other people is great. But in the end of the day, you are responsible for you. So you have to make your choices, right? And I think that the number one thing I see, I wouldn't say it frustrates me. It's probably the one thing I see where most people let themselves down, is not taking ownership of their situation and not taking ownership of the outcomes that happens around them, right? Like, it's so easy to blame everyone else for anything that happens, instead of just taking ownership and say, hey, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, that could be many people's fault, but in the end of the day, I was there as me, and, I was the only one that could change that. So what about for other people? I mean, you have a lot of people around you. So what does self-development look like when you're talking with people in your surroundings? Like, how do you help other people develop, and how do you help other people grow in that sense?
Actually, every time I get someone to ask me to help them, coach them, or whatever, it's my authenticity. And you see, my authenticity for the longest time, and I still hear it on occasion, oh, Patrice has a big mouth. Patrice will tell you the truth. Patrice, and at first it was like, wow, okay, so do I have to change that? So for the longest time, and too many times, I tried to please the crowd. And pleasing the crowd, you please nobody, because at the end of the story, you cannot please everybody. And then I had a hard time understanding that, because as my image became more and more public, I was like, oh my God, I need everyone to love me. And it happens in communities too. If you're a leader, a politician, the mayor of your town, the father of your kids, you want everything and everybody to love you. And for me, knowing more and more that, no, I'm going to be me. And you know what? Whoever's coming with me, it's because we are totally emotionally connected, because we have the same core value. And to me, that was really the most important. And that's why now helping others, the fact that they know I'm completely myself. That's why, for instance, what we're doing today is totally unprepared. And there's not like a set of questions we went over. That's how I bring value. That's how, to me, is sharing my story the true way makes others connect with me, want to learn, and I'm helping them doing what I've been through, because I was them at some point. So I'm just ahead of the journey. I'm not better. I'm just ahead of it. And I have a few more steps that I have done already that I can help people to grow.
Yep. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And I think when we're looking at growth, right? I mean, I think it's interesting to see how people do it differently. I think the one thing I notice when people are trying to help people around them grow is that they're often all teaching their process, right? And I've seen firsthand that both I do things a lot different than most people, right? But people get motivated, people get pushed in different ways. So as example, I've always had a lot of goals, but I keep them in my head until I have achieved them, right? Whereas I see others that needs to run around and shout them from the rooftop because they need to other people around them to put pressure on them and so on, right? So I think whatever it is you're developing, whatever your goals are, it's just important to understand that, you know, people are different, and particularly at being a leader, right? Like you have to understand that people around you don't necessarily behave the same way. They don't, you know, if you read a book and suddenly it's eye-opening to you, that doesn't mean it will be eye-opening to the rest of the world, right? So that's good. That's good. I think the next sort of big topic, I think, is around communication, right? Now, I generally spend a lot of time talking with leaders about communication, because in any level of business, communication is so critical and so important. But I think you probably come at communication from a different angle than most sort of typical business leaders. So tell me a little bit more about your sort of communication philosophy and how you look at communication in general.
Yes, that's a great point. And I actually got my aha moment when I wrote my second book, because my editor was really helping me just building everything together. She was not just a copy editor. She was just everything around. It was about knowing and understanding that, oh, we do connect with words very differently. And why is that? Because we emotionally are connected with the word in the setup that we grew up in, what part of the world, what religion was in the house, what mentor inspired you. And all this for that, I realized from a very beginning, for instance, hair, all right? My client sits in the chair and it's like, what do you want? Well, I want short hair today. Yeah, but what is short hair? And short hair to me is what I'm wearing, for instance. But for many ladies out there, short hair would be touching the shoulder. Why? Because we all connect to words very differently emotionally, because of the set and the patterns that we have been developing from the time we're a kid. So now, fast forward, you're a leader. Because the word means something in your head, in your world, in your core value, it doesn't mean that it's going to be the same for others. Colors are the same, and shapes, and everything in concept. What is saying the truth for people? What is lying for others? Same, all that together makes you a good communicator when you're sure to really understand others. And that's why the communication process is to listen to people, because now if you really pay attention to what they're saying, now you have all the clues to build your map. Now you have understood that this is how communication works. It's really about understanding what the person says first. And if there is no clarity, it's like, all right, but on this, what do you exactly mean? The same thing as if my client were asking me for a certain color, I would have to make sure, images and photos to saying, oh, okay, so if that is your interpretation of that color or that cut or that length, same thing as a leader, whatever industry you're in, your word, and again, the way you're connecting with it is your way to, because you have built that from your head and now you think this is obvious, but what's obvious to you is not. I'm actually involved with a business right now and it's with a very good friend of mine. He's a horrible communicator and has that sense that whatever he thinks, I can already read his mind. And on occasion, of course, we go head to head because it's like, but this is not what you said. You said it a certain way. And I was like, yeah, well, that's what it means. Wow, that's what it means to you. So you see, and because of that, it's disrupting the chain. And because of that, I'm demotivated, or I'm like, well, you know what? When he's going to feel a lot better about himself, then he'll come back to me and explain it in a different way. And that's really why it's crucial. Listen, talk, and then you can put all the pieces together.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And I mean, I spend a lot of time on behaviors and just how humans think and so on, right? And I totally agree with what you're saying, because I think it's not just the experience that we have, right? But people just communicate differently. And some people, they don't even listen to the words you're saying. They literally just look at you, how you behave, how, you know, your emotions, your body language, like they don't listen to the actual words. Whereas you have other people who are literally sitting, staring into a wall when they look at you, and they listen to every single word you're saying, and they, not how you say it, but the words you say. All right. So just very, like, people have very, very different communication styles. And one of the things that I learned from a relatively early age was public speaking. And that was really something that benefited me big time, because standing in front of a crowd, learning to be, you know, short, direct, get to the point quickly, but at the same time being engaging, is definitely a skill set that I think up anyone's communication. All right. So I think that has definitely been key for me. What do you see? So you mentioned a little bit with people you work with, but any particular processes or any views of how to help people become better? So if you are working with a client, for example, that you feel is not great at communicating, do you have any sort of tips and tricks or anything of how to actually help them improve?
Yes, definitely. So you see, often when people hire me, they think I'm going to give them the magic solution. It's really the kid coming to you with an equation. You give him the solution, and it's like, oh, okay, oh, yeah, okay, got it. Instead of it, I show and I don't tell. That's also something I've learned from my editor with my second book, because it was about like, stop telling me. I want to understand it myself. So by doing so, I started understanding the process and the depth of it. Again, communicating was key. So I had to tell my message in such way that for everyone to read, it was like, yeah, totally clear. I got it, and that was the feedback I got, which was the biggest gift of all, before money or fame or anything. So to your point now, when I help, the tips and tricks are really saying why. The why is always a great way to put yourself back into accountability. You mentioned a little earlier, because when you go for your why, and why, you know, that annoying question, yeah, but why? And I did that with digital. When people were asking me, yeah, who are you talking to? Okay. And I was too vague until I had to narrow down my message into a tunnel vision to be so short, to be focused and precise, that it helped me to build my brand. And in that why thing, if you ask yourself why, it makes the biggest difference. Another one, write it down. I mean, digital is all good now because everybody's typing away and then, yeah, doing 3 things at the same time. No. It's really about old-fashioned, because if we write it down, the brain produces the idea. It goes down the arm. Now you write it down on a piece of paper. Your site is picking it up, sending the information to the brain. And now there is a circle that's coming. And now it's about balance, because you can understand better the information in your mind, without saying that. Now you can go back to it again and again and again and say, oh yeah, that is a great reminder. So those things help you developing who you are, who you want to be. What are your goals? You were talking about goal settings. By doing so and writing them down, that old-fashioned thing that we once upon a time did, which apparently now is totally obsolete, is actually not. This is the way we function. We were never built for all that digital stuff. We adapted to it, but nonetheless, we are made to be those primary bases that will build the foundation of our mansion.
Yep. That makes a lot of sense. What about leaders in general? Like any particular sort of angles on them, or how to learn to be a better leader in society in general?
Yes, value others, listen, and especially I'm talking now when the company starts really growing, but I've seen it even with smaller company. But, I understand you're the leader, you have a point of view, you have a brand that you want to build. Great. It's all fine and dandy. But other people have also good ideas. And you see, that was my problem. For the longest time, I thought I know it all. I'm good. I'm great. And, because I'm well spoken and sophisticated, I observed the world and I went through ups and downs and all. I thought, please, I got that. Until realizing, remembering maybe that one of my employees said something and I was like, actually, he was kind of right. Or she had a really good point. And from that, I started thinking, oh, wow, okay, listening. Listening is a huge thing that I didn't know how to do. I was always talking first. I wanted to lead. So because if I lead, I must be the one speaking. Until realizing, actually, maybe if I had talked the least around a boardroom, for instance, it becomes this conversation that helps building the brand and actually helping me with their feedback and their experience to build what I'm doing now. So in your leadership skill, you've got to listen. Patience is another one. When you're an entrepreneur, patience is something you don't really have because what is the goal? The goal is making money. And if I want to make money, I want to make money now. Doesn't matter. Because if you are, and it really is the wrong way to look at it, because if money is the only goal, well, the motivation is really all over the place because now you're completely out of alignment. You don't listen to anybody. You keep on running. Even if you have a team of people, no success is going to come from it. So patience and listening are key, fundamental keys to build success.
Yeah, I love the listening part. I think one of my leadership lessons I teach people is always, particularly in meetings, is speak last. Because it's not just that you're not listening to other people, but particularly as a leader, the problem is when you speak, others are a lot less likely to speak afterwards because they're like, well, okay, the boss already has the answer, I don't want to say my idea. They might think it's a stupid thing, right? So learning to speak last around meetings is super, super valuable, right? Because it's not about you. And I think that's where most leaders go wrong. They think it's my company or it's my team or it's my whatever, I have to step up. But reality is being a leader is making the people around you shine, right? And you can't make the people around you shine if you're not listening to them and you're not giving them space to shine. So that makes a lot of sense as well. Fantastic, Patrice. Any particular sort of resources or anything on development in general that you can recommend?
In which way, you mean?
Any kind of resources that you feel maybe have been helpful to you throughout life? So that could be books or particular people you follow.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah. My biggest, The Power of Now was my first ever book I read, Hector Tolle, to knowing. And it was funny because as I'm discovering all that self-development, meditation, I was kind of like in that transition mode right after I lost it all. To saying, all right, how do I reset this? How do I really put myself first and knowing my value? And I had this yogi that was really crucial for my growth. And he said to me, read this book. This book is amazing. The Power of Now. What's the power of now? Because the power of now means that if you don't cherish the moment, and that's why leadership, my step number 3 of my coaching program for 9 weeks is spirituality. Of course, I'm not saying that immediately because they would think, man, something is wrong in there. Well, it is not, because if you don't have that key ingredient in your formula, knowing that the present moment, that just that second, that minute right here, right now, for instance, we are together here. I'm spreading my message because I'm taking the time as of now to have a ripple effect when you're going to play this piece with thousands of people. That's what it is. So to me, the power of now was this thing where I was reading, and as I'm reading it, it became and I'm like, I understand it. It was kind of a out of body experience because to me it was like, yeah, no, I totally got it. And then another thing, there is a podcast that I listen to, Abraham Hicks. Although she's a woman, people think she's, no, her name is Esther. But Abraham Hicks has been fundamental as well for law of attraction. I couldn't understand that if I keep nagging, like, oh, I don't make enough money and maybe I'm not accountable, it's always someone else's fault. And like you mentioned earlier too, and say, that's really what started getting me to be like, okay, relaxing in the moment, understanding that I'm enough and I'm good. And the more I'm thinking that I'm good and I'm okay with everything that comes in my life, more abundance is coming my way. And the more I'm doing it, the more things are aligning easily around me instead of battling, I want to get that business deal. Okay, so instead of knocking it down until it's going to happen, but something is going to break in the middle because the energy is wrong in it. And to me, self-development, Abraham Hicks, has been crucial because every morning I would literally listen to her. I haven't done it so much lately because I feel like I don't need as much of a fix because I'm feeling the alignment just coming my way. And when I sort of feel like, okay, I'm a little, boom, 15 minutes, the beginning of my day, and I'm good. Same thing when I wake up, be grateful. Again, it sounds like some guru stuff. It isn't. Those 5 minutes should just say, hey, thank you. Thank you for being here. And it doesn't have, I don't care what religion, what faith you have in your life. That's another key point. Why? Because I read so many books of leaders, of major people out there, and all of them are saying, oh no, I start with meditation. Same thing. That was a process. Oh my God, the mind couldn't shut up and I couldn't make it happen. And then I realized little by little that easing up into it years later made me like in peace and starting my day in such calm that then everything else was just beautifully aligned.
Perfect. Well, fantastic, Patrice. That was super, super useful. And I hope that was as valuable for the audience as it was for me. If people are eager to get hold of you, what's the best way to do so?
Yes. So, you have two ways about it. So Image Impact Index is my Facebook and my website. So imageimpactindex.com is my platform where you can find all the material, videos and all. And my Facebook group, which is now I'm actually closing next week. I'm building this group to knowing how to build your brand. And all of the components we talked about in it are leadership, communication, self-development, all of that together will be in that private group. So if you want to do so, please, Image Impact Index, go on my Facebook page, Pro, and then we can communicate. And if you have a question, perfectly like a clear question, info@talktopatrice.com. And that's my email, and that's where I will answer. I promise everybody the fastest I can, and that's where I answer all the questions as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for joining me today. It was awesome having you on board here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Fantastic. And to the audience, thank you very much for sticking with us all the way to the end. We'll be back again next week.
Thank you for listening to the Mad Singers Management Podcast. Please leave a review. It means the world to us. You can also learn more about management at madsingers.com.